Hey there, fans of the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. This was another excellent episode of Survivor 45 that just passed on not too long ago, where we had another big exit from the game. The big exit, of course, is America's favorite, Emily Flippin. We didn't expect her to go at this point. I think a lot of people had it very convinced that she was going to actually win the game. Lauren, I did an interview with Lauren Hart from Survivor 44 last week, and she had me pretty convinced that Emily was the number one person that is set up and lined up to win this game. But unfortunately, as we saw with this last vote, a lot of moving pieces happened that ultimately ended up getting Emily out of the game. Now the question is, at this point, really, how did it all go down? Did it go down in the way that it probably should have for the people who had the decision-making ability? And I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this recap video. New to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can see more Survivor content in the future. We have more Castaway interviews that'll be happening for the future to break down the game, which I think is always really fun. Long, thorough breakdowns are absolutely great. And of course, we'll be doing other content in the off season, where we'll be going over like top 10 lists or like fantasy cast, fun things like that that are always ahead. But let's dive into the actual episode itself. I mean, right now we have everyone celebrating because Bruce is gone, which I don't really understand. Strategically, I didn't think it made very much sense for Katurah, Jake, and Emily to get rid of Bruce when he had an idol, and he was someone who seemed to not be totally aware of what was going on in the game. So you get rid of Bruce, now it's the Reba 4 versus Katurah, Emily, and Jake. But oddly enough, it seems like Reba's first move is to try to cannibalize one another, specifically to target Mama J, Julie, because Julie supposedly is this big jury threat. From the outside as a viewer, I don't really get it. I can understand why people would like Julie. I can understand why maybe they'd be a little wary, but you just got the majority. Why would you work so hard to get rid of the majority right away, pretty much? So it didn't make a ton of sense to me. But there's a big wrinkle in the whole plan. Austin, who had 2 hidden immunity idols, thanks to one he had gotten a long, long time ago just from digging it up, with the help of Mama J and D, actually. And also the second one was from the amulet advantage, the famous idol that he ended up getting as a result of not getting his sandwiches in that whole summit with J. Maya and Kelly. But he had 2. Now he gave one of them to Julie about 2 tribal councils ago, fearing that if they split up, she would be voted out and Reba would lose their 4th member. However, that didn't happen. But Julie still has the idol, and it looks like Austin never went out of his way to ask for it when he was working with Julie. So Julie goes into this episode still having Austin's other idol, and apparently no communication about giving it back, which is a pretty badass move on her part, and a pretty silly move on Austin's part, I would have to say. I mean, part of it is, I guess he's saying like, well, you know, I'm trusting my ally. Or they just didn't show us like Julie savagely going like, nah, I think I'm gonna hold on to it at this point. And if that's the case, I would think they would show that to us, especially if she has a winning game. But they didn't, so I'm just gonna assume that Austin was a little timid about it, like I think Jake had mentioned a few episodes ago. If it gets down to brass tacks, Austin ultimately isn't going to go to the direction of conflict, and instead he's gonna stay away. If he really lost a hidden immunity idol just because he didn't want to have a little bit of conflict with Julie, then I'm afraid I don't think Austin is going to be the winner of this game. Even though he is absolutely my favorite at this point, I've been rooting for the guy since before the game even started, and he's continued on ever since then. He's only proven me right almost every step of the way. But this episode is one where I think we have to discuss whether or not Austin made the right move in order to win the game. Now, the really tricky thing is they had a summit where all the boys basically, got together and they talked about the future. And what they landed on was Julie. Julie was probably the move to make. And you had it kind of split down the middle for the most part. It got interesting because Austin and Drew come back from it and they're like, all right, we're going for Julie. This is what it is, all right? Even though Drew was working with Emily pretty tightly, he was like, all right, we're going to go for Julie and we're going to shrink our numbers down to 3 and 3. And Austin had the unfortunate situation of having to discuss with Dee, who had a large part of the episode had been discussing his relationship with Dee, and there's romantic feelings and she's gorgeous and all that kind of fun stuff. But really the question is strategically, does he go to Dee? Because Julie is Dee's number one, I guess you could say, or the person that she has really sided with from a strategic standpoint other than Austin this whole time. Just like how Dee has been the one for Austin, except for Drew. So Austin has the unfortunate circumstance to be able to deliver that information to Dee saying, so the boys got together and we think it's going to be Julie. Mama J, there's a lot of reasons why she may win the game. She has an idol. we should probably consider voting for her. And Dee's put in the awkward situation where she has to try to dissuade Austin from the vote, which she does. Austin's like, well, even if we wanted to go Emily, I don't think it's going to happen. Katurah and Jake are on board to get rid of Jay too. So then Dee has to figure out a situation where, like, Dee, do I go and tell Mama J? Which Dee does tell Julia, says, hey, don't freak out, Julie. We're going to figure this out, all right? You're going to get voted for. You're going to play your idol. We're going to flip it on Emily, and then we'll be back to where we were. Julie did not respond very well in that situation, to the point where she was trying to get the vote flipped onto Austin as a result of all this stuff. And then, of course, Austin was freaking out, and he's like, I'll play my idol if Julie plays her idol, which was really Austin's other idol. And mind you, the difference between these two idols, Jay, she had an idol that was good until Final 5. And Austin has an idol that's good till Final 6. Both of them belong to Austin. He gave the one that lasted longer to Mama J. No one really knows why. Now, supposedly non-transferable, so he had to keep the Final 6 one for the amulet advantage. However, the Final 5 one, he could do whatever he wanted with because it's a regular idol that was found. And the big question among the fandom that is tearing people apart, including myself, did Austin make the right move by, once talking to Drew, going to tell Dee? Because everyone at this point is like, yeah, Dee has that boy in a headlock emotionally. He made a stupid decision with his heart when strategically he should have not said a thing to Dee. And I sit here as a commentator, as a critic, and I say it's obvious that Austin should have gone to Dee. Dee is his other number one. He's got two really solid allies in this game, like super solid. Drew and Dee. If he blindsides one of them, why would Dee ever work with Austin so closely ever again? And the answer is he wouldn't. And that's why I don't really understand where fans are coming from when they say he was stupid emotionally, that he went to Dee and just told everything. I just don't get it. Strategically, that's just relationships. Why would Dee be invested in Austin anymore if he decides to blindside her? She was like, oh, me and Austin are like this. And then when the blindside happens, it's clear they're not like that anymore. So he may be losing not only a future wifey, but also his tight alliance partner. So I happen to think Austin made exactly the right move in that situation. However, where he screwed up in this whole thing, he should never have given Julie the idol and not asked for it back that night. Jesse Lopez from Survivor 43, who is maybe the greatest idol wrangler, stealer, that thief of all time. Yeah, he quote tweeted this whole thing and said, by the way, if you give someone an idol as a favor, you ask for it back that night. If you don't, it's gone, baby. It's gone. And Austin screwed that one up for sure. Ultimately, Julie did play the idol, makes her look pretty cool, and the vote shifted entirely onto Emily. Emily was voted out of the game. It was very perplexing, though, that nobody threw like a stray vote onto anyone else in case an idol was played by Julie. Instead, they were all thrown onto Julie, which made sense by some of the Reba members. Like, Dee didn't want to vote for Julie, but she did to make it look like it was solidarity. And then instead, like, if Emily had threw a stray vote at like Austin, it would have been one for Emily, one for Austin, and there would have been a revote. You could have at least made the rest of the tribe think about what they would have done in that scenario, and no idol could save Austin anymore. So I don't understand why that was the case. I mean, it seems like this season of Survivor, they're really playing this like hardcore, old school game, and it's really kind of weird. I think it's interesting. I love it as an old school hardcore fan, but it's very odd. Also, side thing, I mean, I've seen very little from Katurah from this season. I know the internet is a huge fan of Katurah. When I say the internet, I mean like Twitter, for the most part, pretty much Twitter, and a little bit of Reddit. I think there's been a lot of unearned fandom up to this point, but in the last 2 episodes, we've really gotten to see a lot of really interesting background from Katurah to the point where you can understand why people really are going to root for Katurah. And if she gets to the final 3, which I don't think she will, I think she's going to lose in fire. But if she gets to the final 3, it's going to be tough not to want to vote for her as a juror when you hear that she was a part of a church/cult, and she was essentially going to become a child bride for like a middle-aged man. And she got out of it, and through very little help from her parents, which is why she's broken off. And now she spends a lot of her life focusing on helping other underprivileged people that need champions. And I thought that was wonderful. I thought it was very emotional, and it came straight from the heart. Absolutely love that. We get to learn more about her story other than, I hate Bruce. How can I hate Bruce every way possible? So that was very good in that regard, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Now, as far as outlook in the game in the future, it's very tight. I think Drew, his game probably is tanked, but he could, he could make it happen. Austin, I think boy, if he doesn't make the final three, I'll be devastated, but I think he will. D's in the driver's seat. It's seemingly like Stephen Fishback has been saying a lot lately, from Survivor Tocantins and Cambodia. Usually what D wants, D gets. Now, in this situation, I actually think D kind of placated Austin's wishes, Austin and Drew's, but inadvertently, like, she made lemonade with that and ended up getting what she wanted anyway, and getting Emily out and keeping Julie. So D's shaping up to do pretty well. Same thing with Julie. Julie, from an immunity standpoint, and is always in it. She's been neck and neck with Bruce for a long time, and he was the main immunity beast out there. Pretty much all the immunity beasts are gone, although D's 1-1 at this point, and Austin obviously is 1-1. But I think it's going to be an interesting game moving forward, certainly. Katurah, I don't see any way she wins this game. Jake, I don't see any way he wins this game. At this point, it's going to be tough. I expect a hard-fought race to the end, and if a Reba doesn't win, I'd be stunned. I'd be truly stunned at this point. But it's no surprise. These four have been steamrolling for a long time. Not exactly like Tika, but the Tika 3 were just swiping people away left and right, and that's essentially what Reba's done, except Reba looks like they're ready to cannibalize one another. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because I would love a Reba win. But that's pretty much the majority of what's happened in this episode. It's been a race to the finish. A lot of great characters. Cannot wait to see how it all goes down. It's been absolutely beautiful. But that's going to do it. Let me know if you think Austin made the right move or the wrong move in this episode. Let me know down below in the comment section. I would love to hear more about it from all of you. Also, just kind of a quick shout out to Mike Gabler, the winner of Survivor 43 and a friend of the show. He actually just announced that they finally finished donating the full $1 million paycheck that he ended up getting from Survivor 43 Octopus Island, and has been distributed to a bunch of charities out there. Rock on to that guy. And that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Take care, and you remember, the vibe has spoken.